Welcome back, fellow shop rats. Today, here in the shop, we are back on this 86 Dodge truck. What do you think? Can we paint this truck for under $500? So far, we're on target. We could be quite a bit below that. I don't think we should be anything over that, but you never know. That's the nature of paint and body work. One thing about this channel is we share every step of the process, and we're doing that over a longer period of time. We're not a channel that's interested in just coming in and saying, boom, there it is, it's all done in 30 minutes or an hour or even 2 hours. We want you to see the painstaking process it takes to even do a cheap and dirty paint job like we're doing here on this old Dodge work truck, because that's what it is. So around here, you guys come, you spend the day with me, we accomplish what we accomplish in a day, and that's the way it works.
This is My Cars Shop.
In our last episode, we had hoped to be going ahead and putting that urethane primer on, but we ran into some issues. We found a dent in the fender that we had missed before. It took a little bit longer to block the doors out, but hopefully today we're going to be ready to go ahead and do some spraying and get that polyurethane primer sprayed on this truck today.
Let's just do it! Do it now!
One question people might ask is, why aren't you doing a better job of cleaning up the area and all that stuff? Two reasons. Just priming. There's going to be more priming coming. We're going to be sanding this primer before we spray it. There's a good chance we're going to have to do one more coat of primer after this. We don't know yet. So I don't worry about it. I know when I go to put the paint on this, believe me, we're going to transform everything and clean everything thoroughly, blow the dust out of the ceiling and all that. But I've never been as worried about primer. I've not really had issues getting dirt and stuff in the primer like this. And this isn't the final finish. So I blow all the dust out and get things cleaned up so that my spray gun doesn't stir something up and get it in the wet primer. But otherwise, it's not something I've ever been terribly concerned about. When the paint comes to painting, we will get this truck out of here. We'll get this area all cleaned up. We'll probably hang some tarps and create ourselves a little paint booth. But that's just the way I do it. You don't have to agree with it. That's how I've been doing it for a long time. It just saves a bunch of time, and we just do all our cleaning at once and get it done. Just going to go over everything with a Scotch-Brite here, touch up stuff that I may have missed in our last session out here. If you guys want to walk around the truck while I'm doing this and just look at stuff and make sure I didn't miss anything, that would be outstanding. Because, the more eyes, the better is what I'm trying to say. Making sure that's not tape. Nope, it's not. Okay, it's just a spot. Okay. I haven't dressed this door jamb at all. It was already primed before we got the truck here, and I'm just going with that because it's just a door jamb, so it'll be fine. And all we're trying to do is just go over it and scuff it up a little bit so that our primer will stick. We will also be going over it with some Prep-Sol here soon. I did take the striker out of that side. I'll probably go ahead and take this one out too. That's how we roll. I think that's key. You have to find what works for you. There's certain things that, well, I was just on a couple of discussion forums yesterday, and guys were discussing a particular voltage. I won't go into what it was, about how something should be wired and so forth. And there was, you need a resistor here, you don't need a resistor there, blah, 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 blah. And everybody was giving their opinion, but nobody was going back and just going to the manual and saying, here's the specification. This is what Mopar says it should be. There is that. There may be some tweaks here and there on things like maybe you want to run your bearing clearances a little bit on the looser side or whatever, but for the most part, specifications are specifications. With painting, it's not quite that cut and dried. There are recommendations, there are best practices, and then there's what works. And I think that's important. You have to discover what works for you when it comes to painting. I've painted so many cars, it's ridiculous. From literally trophy-winning show cars. I think particularly of a 57 Chevy that I did for a buddy of mine. I think there's pictures around somewhere on it. That car won just about every show it was ever in. It won a trophy. So, you know, I'm not coming at this painting thing from a perspective of not having any experience. I've worked on six-figure cars, just done a lot of work on a lot of show quality cars over the years, and context is everything.
And it's not just the messages you receive via cell phone from your relatives in prison.
I don't say all of that to, you know, come at this from an angle of, well, I'm an expert and you need to listen to me because I am here to teach you exactly how you should do things. That's not the point of this channel. And if you're new here, you know, that is important to understand. I'm here to share what I do. You can take from that and learn. You can take from that and reject it, and you still learned. You can say, you know, that's I want to do things like Mike does. Okay, that's fine. Or I definitely don't want to do things like that, and that's good. You learn something there too. I don't ever want to come across like, well,
I'm the expert here and I know what I'm doing and here's what you need to do.
There are certain things that, like I said, there are specifications you should follow and that kind of stuff, but paint and body work is it's a best practices thing, and then there's what works for you, and at the end of the day, if it turns out shiny, if it turns out looking good, if it's flat and the paint doesn't fall off, I think it was a success. I could be wrong, but
Oh wow, you didn't grind your welds properly, or you had 3 mil of Bondo more than you should have in that spot, or...
I mean, fill in the blank. There are so many opinions, and you know what they say about opinions? They're like belly buttons, is what I'm trying to say. So I share what I do, and you can take and adapt and learn and apply, or that's up to you. Somebody recently had commented on that they really like the channel because it's not a how-to, but it's a how I do channel. And it really is it. That really is it. You know, I will label a lot of my videos how to do this or how to do that. And that's just because I think people tend to want to look at things from that perspective. Well, how do I do this? Well, here's a way that it can be done. But I don't ever want to come across as this is the only way. I think as I've done the channel more, I've come to relax into that a lot more as I'm finding my niche in you know, in how I present my videos and how I present my projects and stuff like that. It's a process, is what I'm really trying to say. As you guys are walking around the shop, if you see my can of paint prep, grab it, please. I thought it was a can of paint prep, and it's a can of lacquer thinner. So I know it's here somewhere. We'll find it. Found it. It was back in the engine area. Oh, I'm so ready for spring to be here and get a good spring cleaning job done, but that's not today's issue. I've said before, but I'll say again for those that are new, never put your rag over the can of prep sol because you can wash contaminants back in to the jar. I'm going to go through and wipe this all down with prep sol. Get it all cleaned up, degreased, and ready to spray our primer on. This also gives me an opportunity to feel if there's stuff that needs to be sanded more. A little scratch in there. I must have nicked it with something in the shop here. That'll go away. When I grow up to be big, my goal is to have a paint shop, a paint booth, an engine building room, and then a general fabrication area. So that's my goal for the channel. That's my goal for the shop. It'd be really cool. I have plans to build another building, but we're nowhere in a position financially to even come close to that at this point. But, you know, you got to have dreams that you don't fulfill. It's just, you know, it's important. Okay, we're going to be here for, probably a good half hour, 45 minutes to an hour doing this, so I'm not going to bother time-lapsing that for you. You get the idea, is what I'm trying to say. And here's the beautiful thing about going over it all with the prep sol is you find stuff like, I never sanded this spot. There's a bunch of dirt in here, so Plus, it's just not sanded. This was where I had put some of that polyester primer. So I'm just going through and flattening it out a little bit. I'm using a double thickness so that my fingers don't travel through. So this is fairly thick sandpaper. You don't generally want to do this. My experience allows me to get away with it, also knowing that if I fold this heavier sandpaper over, it's less likely to transfer finger marks. I wouldn't be doing this in the middle of a big panel necessarily, but in a small place like this, it'll be fine. Okay, there was 3 pieces of dirt in there. They're sanded out now, so that's good. I'm also trying to work my hands this way more than this way, so you don't end up pressing those fingers through. Gone over it one time with Prep-Sol, with single rag, just getting everything rubbed down. Now we're going to go over it with a wet rag and a dry rag one more time. I still need to do the doors, but I'm going to do them after I finish the cab. So lather, rinse, and repeat. This is body work. It's a lot of tedious, repetitious. I can't tell you how many hours you're going to spend with your hands on those panels for every step of this process. It's ridiculous, really, how much time you spend just running your hands. I mean, I found a couple of little imperfections. I'm not messing with it because it's a work truck. There's a little low spot on the top of the fender. There's a little teeny spot back here. But the owner yesterday was reminding me, hey, it's a work truck. It's a work truck. It's going to get beat up. It's going to be used. I want it to look very respectable, obviously, but my tendency is always to go to, perfect panels, perfectly flat panels, and that's not what we're doing with this truck. So, little compromises, things that I will see, nobody else would ever see. They're not going to bug me, and that's the main thing, is I'm not going to look at it when it's done and go, I wished I would have spent an extra hour on that little spot. Not going to happen on this one. Just thought I would demonstrate this 2-rag process. So basically I go over it with a wet one and follow it with a dry one. And so what I'm doing is literally putting it on and wiping it off. That takes up any residue that might be left behind, stuff like that. There always tends to be a little residue of dust that can be left behind. If I don't mention it in this video, by the way, remind me to comment on wet sanding. There's a discussion we should have about that. We're obviously not doing that on this project so far. We may never on this project. There's reason. We'll get to it. Everything's been gone over twice now. A few things I'm going to mask. I'm going to cover up the hood hinges, even though they're kind of wonky. I'm going to cover up these little black rubber things. I'm not spraying in there, but still I'm just going to throw some tape over them so that they stay black. Other than that, not much. We're not going to be priming the top or the back. I explained in the last episode, I'm concerned about doing the visible panels and getting these things in this polyurethane primer as soon as possible, because I want time for that stuff to level out and shrink, and the shop isn't heated. And believe it or not, and I've experimented with this, there is shrinkage that occurs. So let me tell you the story real quick. It was actually on Becky's truck back when I was driving it as a daily driver. She's got a truck just like this, but it's a long box 4-wheel drive. And I put a new driver's door on that truck, and I did the rough sanding work in 36 grit in just it was in those days I wasn't using the poly primer, or the polyester primer. So I roughed it in, and then I sprayed it with polyurethane, and I roughed it in again with 36 grit, made it nice and flat. And then I went ahead and shot it with a good heavy coat of high build 2K polyurethane primer, and blocked it 2 days later after it set for a day or two till it cured. I guess it was a day later. I went back because I was in a hurry, and I just blocked it out. There was no sand scratches in it at all. It looked great. It was just shiny as a mirror. Painted it black, put it on the truck, and away it went. 2 weeks later, even though they say that polyurethane primer doesn't shrink, it did, and sand scratches showed back up. And now, I did that on purpose to prove that, yes, back in the days of lacquer primer, it would take weeks for those solvents to come out in the primer, and you would end up with what they call sand scratches or sand scratch swelling, where those solvents would come out, and then everything would shrink and swell, and you'd end up with scratches showing through the paint. They say that these polyesters don't, or polyurethanes don't do that, but that's not true. You need to bake them, or what I used to do back in the day was when I was doing like my Model A, if you've seen that, I think I posted some pictures of that over in the community tab. The car was flat as a mirror, it was black, it was gorgeous. When I was priming that, I would just take it, let it sit out in the hot sun for a few days and let everything shrink, and then I would final block it before I would paint it. We're not going to have that opportunity here, but at least this is a chemically activated primer, which means it uses a hardener. And if we leave this for a couple of weeks, even in the shop, though it's not heated up to, just occasionally, it will go ahead and shrink up, and then we can do our final block before we paint it. I think I have everything gathered around here now. It's my little waste can that I use, my paint cup. Need to clean that up a little bit, but I'm not ready for that. First thing I want to do is just check this paint. For those that didn't see this, we were using a U-Pol polyurethane high build for the primer on this. And this can is bent a little bit, so I'm going to have to spend some time fixing that. I dropped it, is what I'm trying to say. I was lucky that the top didn't pop off. They shook it for me real good when I picked it up, but, stuff happens, so... This is some really unbelievably thick primer. It's crazy how heavy this stuff is, so I'm quite concerned about whether or not I'm going to be able to spray this. I'm trying to remember if I have some mineral spirits here that I could thin this with. Hopefully, because quite frankly, look at that stuff. That is going to be a challenge. But they say it's good stuff, and I can see that it would be. It's a very high build. So one way or another, we'll get it. This is a 4-to-1 mixing ratio, so we're going to do this. I'm going to do about a half a cup to start. So we'll fill it up to about here, because I don't know how much we're going to want. I don't want to mix up more than we need to. I put some tape on here that helps me pour this in a more manageable fashion. But this stuff, oh my goodness, it is some thick stuff. Okay, that's about right-ish. That just keeps us from getting paint all down the can. If you've been around the channel for a while, this is nothing new. You've seen me do this on multiple other paint projects. The other thing I'll do is go around the lid of the can, which I already did with a screwdriver, punch about 6 holes. I'll bring you over here and show you why. You see that, and that, and that. That primer is dripping back down through. Eventually that trough will be cleaned out, and when the lid goes back on, it won't glue itself back on there. It's just a little trick I learned way back when I was painting houses. I used to paint commercially. I painted schools and stuff like that. And whenever we'd usually use 5-gallon buckets with a paint pump. But if we used steel cans like this, we would always do that to keep the paint lids from gluing themselves on. And it's a mess to clean that up. And gravity will do 90% of this work for us.
So a little tip.
We're at the 5 mark on our 4-to-1 ratio here. So I'll bring it up to the 5 mark there. Okay, good. Let's see, we got a funnel over there, so we're good, but I need to mixate this first. Wow, I'm quite surprised at how much that reducer is thinning this out. That's good. That's not reducer, that's hardener, but anyway. Yeah, it's making it a lot nicer sprayably, so that's good. I was concerned about how thick that was. There's so many solids in this primer. We're just about ready to shoot
the primer there on the truck and stuff, eh?
I'm sure we're going to need a lot more than this, but I wanted to start with a small amount and go from there. I don't normally use this up here, but I thought I would do this for you so you can see it kind of come through. I've got it mixed up pretty well. That's not bad. This should be, it's about 3 or 4. 2/3 of a paint cup full, maybe. No, it's going to be close to a full cup. Okay, so if we have to mix more, which we will, we'll mix that same amount. It's just like cake batter. You want to get it all out. Not too worried about getting everything because we'll be mixing some more up, I'm sure. Okay, I'm going to put this lid not on the can, but just over the can to keep out the big chunks. Get this stuff out of my way. Okay, we're at 65 degrees in here, so that's good to know. I'll let that finish dripping. I got to shut the furnaces off. and then we'll be able to get our mask on.
And get to shooting the paint.
Always full disclosure, you know that. So it's a product I've never used before. I was getting a little carried away in there. I should have realized that. So I got some runs we'll have to sand out. I might have to touch that up. But no big deal. At least I know I got enough material on there. I also bumped it with my belly because my belly's fatter than I'm used to when I was reaching up around there. But it's looking good. I'm pretty pleased with the way this is turning out. I don't see any curtains back here, so that's good. Yeah, it looks good. No. Yeah, everything looks real good. So again, I don't hide anything from you. And I wondered, I was going so slow, I was trying to get it on good and heavy, and I'm used to using that Nason product. So that should be the last runs I get in this. Part of my other issue is I try to take my glasses off, especially with a product that I haven't used before, because I don't like getting overspray on them. Now that I've sprayed this, I've got my exhaust fan going right there. Wherever it is, it's right in there somewhere, right there. There's hardly any overspray. There's little fumes in the room, but there's no big clouds. So I can put my glasses on. I know I don't have to worry about getting a whole bunch of paint all over my glasses. That's going to take me a week to get cleaned off. Oh, I screwed up there too. I forgot to trim my paint that I had around the VIN tag and stuff. Not the VIN tag, but the factory tag. So I'll do that. Hopefully I remember. We'll get that next time, and we'll blend that in. No biggie. I just forgot to take a razor blade around it and trim it. A lot of guys at this point might be like cussing and swearing and throwing stuff and being all upset. That's nothing. I mean, it ain't nothing to get upset about. It's a run. Big deal. Sand it out. Do it again. Mixing up our second cup right now. I finished up what was left in this one and did the back of the cab and a little of the jam, so we'll go back over and pick up from there. There should be enough to finish the passenger side of the truck, and then we'll mix up probably one more cup to do the doors. I think I'm not going to do a second coat at this point, especially since I got to fix all this anyway. So if I have to mix up more once I fix that, I'll block all of this out real good. And if we need to go and touch up other spots or whatever, we'll see. But we'll let this sit for a while before we sand it. So yeah, that's funny. I mean, some people I know would be so upset by that. Anybody that's painted will tell you, hey, it happens. Even the guys that have, my buddy Matt, who's been painting, he's probably painted more paint than anybody I know. I'm talking literally thousands of gallons of paint, probably tens of thousands. He paints semis for a living, so imagine where we worry about a gallon of paint. He's using, 5-gallon buckets. He gets runs, not as many, because he paints every single day. I don't, and this is a new product, so in the scope of everything, ain't a big deal. Looking good. I just mixed up one more cupful, so we'll have used just about a quart of sprayable. So about a fifth of a quart or a fifth of a gallon of stuff out of the can plus the mixing. One thing I didn't do this here, but there's a shadow sanding in here that somebody went down there and didn't do that properly. That's part of the reason for priming this truck is I didn't do the work. This turned down here turned out really nice. I'm happy with that. So the little dent in the top of the fender, you can't hardly see anymore. Everything's looking great. I didn't get any runs in this side, so I redeemed myself. I adjusted my gun. This one I did do. I got a little sanding mark right there, but I'll get that out. That's no big deal. And I did touch the top of the doors. Again, full disclosure, I don't know how this happened, but the window got rolled up a little bit, and I did get some primer on there. That'll be short work with a razor blade, so I'm not going to worry about it. I got to spray the rest of the doors down here, and I'll just roll that window up real quick, or down, the rest of the way before I shoot the rest of that. The nice thing that I'm really happy with is, this is literally, look around the shop. Look at how there's no overspray. So there's a lot of chemical in the air. I'm smelling the fumes, obviously. And I normally would be wearing my mask, except I'm talking to you, so I took it off. But I'm not worried now about everything in the shop getting full of overspray with this product. And that is a huge bonus when you're spraying in a shop like this. So if the trade-off is I have to learn to spray a little differently than I would with Nason, I'm happy with that because I'm really thrilled that I don't have to worry about all kinds of overspray getting all over everything. So I got another cup mixed up. We're going to go ahead and finish up these doors, and I want to hit this one more time here. And I think I'll probably hit up there one more time if there's any left. Okay, I literally just put the paint gun down from spraying those doors and touching up those couple spots on the other side. This is how much overspray there is in the room. So yeah, the fumes are strong, but no big deal. So I'm gonna let this clear out. This is the outside of my exhaust fan, and I'm doubly impressed with that primer now because look what I forgot to do. I forgot to open up the window so that it actually draws something out. So the fan's been in there doing absolutely nothing. Much better. Give you a bit of a walk around. Windshield turned out nice. Looks good. Door jambs look good. Pillar turned out nice. Our little imperfections are now gone there. We got here, a little piece of debris, no big deal. Got a little teeny dent there, that'll block out. Minor. Probably never see that in the white. Fender looks great. No issues there. This fender looks phenomenal. Everything looks good down here now. I put probably 4 coats on this because I know it's going to take some blocking to get that taken care of. If you can see those shadows in there. Let's see if we can get you in a position you can. Somebody sanded incorrectly and actually sanded a groove from way up here all the way down underneath that body line. So I need to block that flat and get that out of there. That will show up. This side of the frame looks good. No issues there. Door jamb. Let's come around here. Door jamb looks good, no issues, real good. I put a couple extra coats in here because that was my mistake. I didn't finish sanding that out properly. I also did shoot a little bit back in that spot just to touch that up a little bit so it's ahead of the game for when I get the back of the truck and the roof done. Let's come over here to our doors. Our doors look good. You can see they're still just a bit wet. That's because the heat's been off out here and it's only 50 degrees. Now that the heat's back on, that should finish drying. This looks good. I had bumped it right there with the hose, I think is what it was. And so I shot a little more on there so I can block that out and get that little imperfection out of there. But it's looking good. I did forget to put that window up again, so I ended up getting some more on that, but a razor blade will take care of that in short order. A little bit of shadowing in there, feather edges from Bondo. That should block out in this primer. If not, we're going to prime this one more time anyway. Go ahead and clean up our paint gun and our paint cup. Ooh, guess what? We still have a lot of paint in there. Well, that's okay because we're going to do my experiment that I wanted to do. So what I'm doing is I'm filling up a paint cup like this as far as I can. And now that I have that in there, I'm going to set that aside and we're going to watch this over the next year to see if it shrinks and cracks. A good primer won't. It'll stay solid. It'll probably pull away from the edge of the cup just a teeny bit, but there'll be no real shrinking or cracking in there at all if it's really a good product. So we're going to find out. I'm curious to do this experiment. I got to find some place to put this aside. That'll tell me the quality of this U-Pole primer. So a couple of things. I put this on heavy because mostly I find, and I've had paint reps tell me this as well, that putting on, especially your prime coats, and not putting them on heavy enough, they will have a tendency to peel. Now that's especially true with rattle cans. So if you've noticed over the time that I've been doing a lot of projects, you'll see me flooding stuff pretty good with a rattle can. It's because there's nothing wrong with a rattle can product, contrary to what some people will tell you, as long as you watch the quality. And the quality is always a context. If I'm doing floor pans or stuff that's not visible, I don't use cheap stuff. I use the higher end spray can stuff. But whenever you see me putting it on, I'm always putting it on the verge of having runs, or maybe having a few runs. That's the very reason. If it's not on wet enough, it doesn't have time to chemically work and actually bite into the material that you're spraying it on. It's the same thing for products like this. I tend to put the first coat of primer on pretty heavy because I want it to bite right into the stuff that it's going on to. The second reason for that is if I put it on heavy enough, if there's going to be any lifting with other product, like this was primed and had all kinds of other paint on it and stuff like that, if I'm going to have any issues with anything lifting, I want to know now and get it over with. I don't want to be putting the final coat of paint on and have that bite through and all of a sudden I got lifting or peeling or whatever. So that's a personal thing over the years. I put a heavy coat on, I will block it out with something like 220 grit, 180 grit, get it all nice and flat, get the sand scratches out of it, then prime it with lighter coats. I'll probably put on what I would call a glue coat of primer, and then let that set up and then go on it with a pretty heavy coat like what I put on right now. I might go on with a third coat. I don't think we're going to need to do that on this project, but what I want to do next on this is let this sit for a week or so, then block it out. In the meantime, I want to get the rest of the cab, the back, and the roof done, and get that done. We also have the wiper, or the wiper cowl to get done as well. But I want to block all of this stuff out and then see where we're at. But these visible panels that need to be flat, I wanted to get that stuff on there so it could be drying and curing and shrinking if it's going to. And then I'll go, while that's doing that, I can do the rest of this stuff here. So there's a method to my madness, and I wanted to explain my rationale and my thinking. What I will do is tomorrow I'll make time. I will come out here and block this fender out real quick because those runs should be set up by then. And then I'll lightly probably touch that up again real quick to make sure that those runs disappear. I don't know if I'll bother filming any of that. We'll see. It's going to depend on the kind of time I have and so forth. But you may see an episode or a part of an episode on that. Maybe I'll do that when I'm going to go do the rest of this. I don't know. We'll see. So I'm going to clean up my paint guns and get all this stuff dealt with. If you have any questions, shoot them down there in the comments or go over into the community tab. We're over on the Face thing, of course. Instagram loves us. You can comment and talk with us over there as well. And we're here. So like, subscribe, share, all that stuff. Oh, I almost forgot.
Rah!